Okay, good afternoon. I'm going to call the City Council meeting for Monday, October the 5th to order, and I'm going to start with the acknowledgement statement. The City of Lethbridge acknowledges that we are gathered on the lands of the Blackfoot people of the Canadian Plains and pays respect to the Blackfoot people past, present, and future, while recognizing and respecting their cultural heritage, beliefs, and relationships to the land. The City of Lethbridge is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. I'm now going to ask our City Clerk to do the roll call.
Thank you. Councillor Campbell.
Here.
Councillor Carlson.
Present.
Councillor Crowson.
Here.
Councillor Hagan.
Here.
Councillor Morrow.
Yeah.
Councillor Miyashiro.
Here.
Acting Mayor Parker.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Kaufman.
Present.
And Mayor Spearman.
Here.
All present. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move on to bouquets. I'll start with Councillor Morrow.
Nothing, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Councillor Crowson.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. I think people can see that I'm wearing my apple today because it is International Teachers' Day. So I just wanted to give a huge bouquet to teachers, students, parents who are going through a chaotic and strange year. And it is a time today to thank teachers on this day. And I also want to send a bouquet out to the Sisters in Spirit group for the walk and vigil last night. It was well attended, but there was also a virtual online aspect as well for people who couldn't or didn't wish to come out. It was a beautiful evening, and I know Mayor Spearman was there, and I hope everybody else had a chance to watch online. It was an amazing night.
Thank you. Councillor Hagan.
Nothing today, Mayor Spearman.
Acting Mayor Parker.
Nothing, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Councillor Miyashiro. Councillor Campbell.
I have nothing today.
Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Many of my bouquets, I think, have been said already. Just to add to the Sisters in Spirit, I know past years have been freezing. This year was a beautiful night, so thank you to all involved in organizing that. Further, we had, I want to send a bouquet to Nikayuko Gardens and Tourism Lethbridge. Last Wednesday, we had an event to welcome Tourism Lethbridge's new executive director, Ms. Jasmine Sangria. The event was awesome. A lot of our stakeholders from in the city and even the region came out, and it was a great event. I'm sorry that I know all of you were booked that evening. Unfortunately, I wish you could have been there. It was lovely. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Kaufman.
Nothing, Mayor Spearman.
I would echo the bouquet to teachers. There hasn't been a year like this. Schools returning, accommodating students, accommodating different styles of learning, and putting themselves on the front line in the COVID crisis. Certainly, thanks to our teachers in the City of Lethbridge for their professionalism and the good work that they do to provide great education for our young people. Sisters in Spirit was a wonderful event as well at the conclusion of our Reconciliation Week. And we have to recognize and understand families that have lost family members. Those are wounds that are deep. There are people in our community who have lost family members. I believe more than 230 individuals have disappeared living on Blackfoot territory. So that's part of our history. And certainly coming out to honor those families and understand their loss was important. And thank you, Councillor Crowson, for the work you've done. Councillor Crowson gave a talk about the impact and certainly celebrating and recognizing October 4th as Sisters in Spirits Day, issuing that proclamation. Thank you for the work that you have done. Thank you. That we'll move on through the agenda. I have a resolution from Deputy Mayor Kaufman. Consent agenda. Be it resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting and public hearing held Monday, September the 21st be approved, and that the Mayor and the City Clerk be authorized to sign the same. And further be it resolved that City Council receive for information the status of directed resolutions with the following amendments. That Council defer the date of return to Council of October 5th, 2020 for the Economics of Childcare to the October 19th, 2020 City Council meeting. And that Council defer the date of return to Council of October 5th, 2020 for the NMAX Center governance structure to a future meeting of City Council. And that Council defer the date of return to Council of October 5th, 2020 for City Council Policies CC 49, Affordable/Social Housing Capital Project Grant, and CC 61, Urban Core Property Improvement Grant Program to the October 19th, 2020 City Council meeting. And that Council defer the date of return to Council of October 19th, 2020 for Police Unclaimed Items Policy to the November 2nd, 2020 City Council meeting. Further be it resolved that City Council give first reading to the following bylaws. Bylaw 6245, Land Use Bylaw Amendment, re 3419 Parkside Drive South, 3417 Parkside Drive South, and 625 34th Street South, Exhibition Park. And Bylaw 6249, Land Use Bylaw Amendment, re 1101 and 1165 Abitibi Road West. Deputy Mayor Kaufman.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. If there are no questions on the consent agenda, I'll call the question.
There are no questions. Questions has been called. All in favor? Are any opposed? I hear none, so that motion is unanimous. I now have a motion from Acting Mayor Parker for adoption of the agenda. That the agenda of the regular City Council meeting of October the 5th, 2020 be adopted as presented, including all communications as submitted by the City Clerk. City Clerk, are there any amendments?
Mayor Spearman, no, there are no additions to the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Just on submissions, I think 5.2 to 5.6. I believe we have an omnibus resolution to refer them to Finance Committee as we discuss budget. Is that going to be added to the agenda, or will we deal with them individually and then do the omnibus, or just the omnibus?
Go ahead, Councillor Deputy.
We don't do that quite often, and so for the recommendation of the City Clerk, do you think we should do that now then? And it could be done now?
It can be done now to let the parties know that that would be the referral for those 5 items in an omnibus. It can be done now.
Okay. So,
And thank you, Your Worship. The only reason is there's several of them. I think there may be some folks here to.
what that means is the debate will happen at budget meetings,
Exactly. If the
not today.
If
Yeah.
the omnibus passes, the folks then could go about their daily lives without having to wait around.
So if we deal with those as an omnibus motion, is it a change to the agenda, or?
So right now, Mr. Mayor, I have the following resolution: the fee for service agreement, that being 5.2, 5.3, 5.4, 5.5, and 5.6, be resolved that the council forward this submission to the November 23rd, 2020 Finance Committee. We could do that now, and then from there, that will remove those items, and then it gives these people, saves them time, and gives them more certainty of what's going to occur.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor, which is approval of the agenda. Is this, how do we rank these motions?
Sorry, this would be an amendment, so it would just be an amendment to the agenda, so it can be done by general consent unless someone opposes.
Okay,
it's a
so
vote.
Acting Mayor Parker is bringing forward an amendment to his motion. Fee for service agreements, 5.2, 5.3, 5.4, 5.5, and 5.6 of today's agenda, which are listed as submissions. Be it resolved that Council forward these submissions to the November 23rd, 2020 Finance Committee meeting. Councillor Parker?
First of all, Mr. Mayor, I think we should make sure we have proper process here and that we haven't adopted the agenda. Why don't we make a motion to accept that as part of the agenda, and then after that, we'll read that out and then vote on it. Does that sound fine? It seems more proper for process. And I think, because we haven't ratified the agenda, and so thank you to Councillor Carlson. So now we're going to add that to the agenda, and so I would just ask myself as the mover that we approve the agenda as amended. And then we can proceed to that one after we do item.
So either we vote on the amendment or we just assume that it's part of the motion because the two are both your motions.
That's right. But the first one, that being to add the ambiance one, we're going to add it now and then we're going to ratify it. So we're adding it right now, and if we add it, we'll just vote on the ratification of the agenda, and then we can vote on that right after. I think I'm correct on that, Madam City Clerk?
Yeah, I'll just ask for a ruling just to make sure we're procedurally correct.
You're right, you're taking a shortcut, so if there's no opposition to your proposal, then we can go ahead and do the agenda as amended. If there's
Okay.
opposition, then it should be voted on.
Okay, thank you very much.
It is an amendment, yes.
So is there any member of council that is in opposition to the amendment proposed by Acting Mayor Parker? Hearing none, I will consider the original motion amended.
So I just ask for council to accept the agenda as amended.
Okay, thank you.
Question?
Any questions? I see none. All in favor? Are there any opposed?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
There are none. Thank you.
Good suggestion also, Councillor Carlson. Thank you. Now we'll move that resolution. Now we should probably do that. Want to do that resolution now? The one that I've added to the agenda? Oh, really? We've already done it? Okay.
Did it as an amended motion? So you amended,
We-
amended the motion
Agenda.
to approve the agenda.
Yeah, we added it to the agenda. I think Councillor Parker is asking if we could vote on it first so that folks, if they're waiting around for that, could leave.
We just did.
No,
Yeah,
we voted on approving the agenda as amended. That resolution has
Yeah, with
not
the referral
been.
in there, so it's been referred already.
Oh, really? Unintended shortcut that I didn't expect.
Yeah, that's,
I was planning just to add it to the agenda and then to vote on it after, now that it's been part of the agenda. Because
how
you
I
said the resolution really technically wasn't on the books. And so now we put it on the books, we ratified the agenda. Now it's included in the agenda, so now we can vote on it as part of the agenda. Am I
That is
correct
what-
on Councillor Carlson? Is that what you're assuming as well?
my
Yeah,
interpretation.
mine too.
My interpretation, my ruling was that it was an amendment, it was a referral amendment, and it was voted on. And the agenda was as amended as well, so it's all done.
Thank you, but then perhaps let's have some clarity, because that's what I was hoping to get. This, just to ask about process, this has been referred to our budget deliberations that will be upcoming. And just for clarity, the groups that are in there will be invited to that November 23rd meeting to present or answer questions at that meeting. I just want some clarity for the public watching.
For that to the city manager, that process?
Yes, we'll find a way to ensure that takes place.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay, we'll move on now to presentations. And I'll ask Mr. Martin Thompson, Dr. Alina Turner, Richard Thiessen to come forward and present to us on Lethbridge Community Wellbeing and Safety Strategy, Round 1, Funding Allocations.
Mayor Spearman, if I can, one moment. Typically, when CSD gives a presentation, I excuse myself because of my organization having a contract with FCSS. Because they're not discussing that funding today, then I will stay in my chair.
Okay, so you're declaring conflict and excusing yourself. No conflict. Okay, no conflict and not excusing yourself. Okay. All right then.
Give me one of those kind of meetings.
Okay. I will ask that this isn't eating into the time for Mr. Thiessen or Mr. Thompson or Ms. Turner. So we'll ask them to give their presentation. Please proceed, Mr. Thiessen.
Good afternoon, Your Worship and council members. Thank you for asking us to come. I'm here representing the Community Wellbeing and Safety Strategy Committee. As the chair designate, I'm in place of Debbie Deeks, who is the chairperson of this committee, and she has dental surgery, so I'm glad to be here instead of there. I'm also joined by Dr. Alina Turner, who leads an external consulting team that specializes in designing, developing, and delivering social programs and ecosystems with world-class expertise in program design and performance management, as well as Martin Thompson, the manager of community social development here at the City of Lethbridge, who I'm sure you all know.
Me, right?
Your Worship, members of council, a presentation and briefing document has been provided to you for you to review at length. In the interest of time, we are going to fast forward directly to slide 6, and I'm going to get Dr. Alina Turner to talk about the the process used to make the allocations. We are here today to seek approval to allocate $5,981,521.91 in funding towards social service programs designed to implement the community and well-being and safety strategy. The strategy is an evidence-based strategy grounded in systems planning and integration of resources to achieve collective impact, and it is coupled with a robust performance management system. Thank you.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for having us here today to give you this update. We thought, again, in the interest of time, we will focus our presentation on the pieces that are more pertinent to today's discussion, and the first one is around the allocation process. And the reason I'm co-presenting this with Marty is because as an external third party, I don't have those vested interests around the locality other than to ensure that we're applying the best practices that we all want to achieve. So to that end, what you see here is a summary of a very arduous number of months that we spent going through a very fulsome technical review of 69 applications. So you can see there was about 300 hours of technical analysis work that went into every application. Those applications were shared with an advisory committee made up of folks in the community that again, we're representing funding bodies, we're representing different public systems that had the expertise to weigh in and help us develop the best decisions moving forward. As you can see in the timeline as well, we went very in-depth on what's called a social impact audit. So to actually ensure that we're getting the best value for the taxpayer dollars, because we are talking about provincial, federal, and municipal funds here, the ROI was one of the top criteria that we looked through. The other piece was around the ability of the agency to support a systems transformation effort that we all undertook together when we all decided to go down this track of change and challenging that status quo. So that meant that we needed to put the limited dollars that the city was investing in the social service system to best strategic use. And in fact, the social impact audit showed that the city's money was in fact only 2% of the organization's budgets that were coming forward, and even in this process. So how can we best leverage it was our challenge. How can we choose the best, and how can we ensure that those best are going to be delivering pieces that can unlock the system as well. So with all this technical analysis, it all came together into what's called an ecosystem design. So actually thinking about big picture, where does the city fit, where does the province, the feds, and the various departments fit, and this broader 1,500 rich program ecosystem, so that we ensure that the funding that we were putting in was going towards the right gaps. So to that end, we'll go to the next slide. And again, it's not about going through this in depth other than to say we wanted to develop a process as well as a as a programmatic investment in pieces that could actually transform the local system. So what you see here is a schematic of all the types of services that are being provided in the community. But of course, what the city is itself proposing to fund are only parts of this new system. However, those parts that we are proposing to fund will help unlock the rest of that $700 million that we talked about many times that's coming into the community in a relatively haphazard and uncoordinated fashion. What's new this time is that for the first time ever, we have consistent KPIs, so performance management metrics that are required. The ROI, the cost per service recipient, the cost per space are all consistent to benchmarks. We've not had that before. So just that basic rigor is there, and that's going to be enabling us to ensure we're getting the best for the community. So with that, the only other piece I was going to pass a thanks to is that what you're doing here is now, I'm seeing it replicated in other communities as well. And so I wanted to pass on my congratulations, because I'm sure you guys are getting a lot of calls from other communities, and that's sometimes a lot of work as well. So thank you very much. That's my phone telling me my time is up. Thanks, Britt.
Regarding the proposed round one funding allocations, COVID and ever-changing federal and provincial budget adjustments have severely impacted our funding processes. We have had to adjust almost daily to funding changes from the other levels of government. Therefore, we are making 2 rounds of funding recommendations for 2 key reasons. We have homelessness funding that must be spent no later than March 31st, 2021. We need to get this money out the door ASAP to allow programs to be effectively delivered. In addition, we are getting additional homelessness funding from the federal government, but the details have not yet been released. Thus, we are strategically waiting to confirm and then integrate this funding into our new model in the round 2 of the funding recommendations. Excuse me. Today's funding recommendations are laden with homelessness dollars that, again, must be used before March 31st, 2021, and with municipal block funding that must be used for rent supplements. Now, of course, this funding goes hand in hand with some of those homelessness dollars to help those people in need. We have strategically integrated this funding with some ongoing funding to support that integrated, coordinated access process and key system-wide initiatives, and to address immediate high-priority needs such as permanent supportive housing and adaptive case management, which is designed to assess, triage, house, and case manage clients with extreme needs. The organization selected to deliver these services scored the highest in key categories, including best cost value, proven organizational capacity, strategic alignment, and willingness to innovate, evolve, and co-invest. Round 2 will be approximately $2.1 million, and as high as $2.7 million, pending additional federal dollars. The second round of funding will focus on specific programs that work within this new system. They will focus on addressing the specific needs of target population groups, such as seniors, Indigenous, and children. FCSS funding for the prevention and intervention programs is not being compromised. They will be presented in round 2. The next steps will be round 2 funding allocations, which will occur on November 2nd, which then is followed up by the actual contract execution, which can take between 1 to 2 months. And then, of course, we explore the opportunity to continue transition into phase 2, where we start to integrate dollars from the rest of the community. Please. I will now pass it back to Richard Thiessen.
Just want to close with comments that the CWSS Advisory Committee stands in full support of the round 1 recommendations. Also included in your package were 2 letters of support, one of them being from the Evangelical Free Church of Lethbridge, that I am also the chair of that board there. And we stand in support of the coordinated assessment of needs and delivery of care for our community. And we plan to work in conjunction with that. I want to thank you for your time today. We look forward to answering any questions you may have.
Thank you for your presentation. We will move on to questions. We'll start with Councillor Carlson.
Mr. Spearman, thank you, Mr. Thompson, Dr. Turner, and Mr. Thiessen for the presentation, all the information you did send out. My main question, I guess, is focused on results, outcomes, and especially on clients and affected people. Can you assure me that these allocations, if approved today, will see improved outcomes, better utilization of the resources, and most importantly, in my mind, that no one currently relying on these services will fall through any of the cracks?
So we do have a very robust transition plan. We fully recognize that when you make change in program delivery, that there must be a transition plan to ensure clients' needs are taken care of. It's important, of course, to support those organizations that are changing or evolving or taking on new programs. But at the crux of all of it is the care and safety of the client, which is paramount. Regarding the outcomes, we are very confident that our outcomes will improve and that it'll be a more cost-sustainable model, that we will get value for our dollars. We have great organizations that have done great work, passionate people. Like anything, though, we're trying to improve the system to generate even better outcomes, to evolve. Our community has changed, and we need to adapt to the changes within our community and the other levels of government. We have done extensive work defining outcomes in key performance indicators. In fact, we're co-creating them with the organizations that are going to be funded, so they're part of that process. Will we evolve as we move forward and make changes? Absolutely. Transformational change means evaluating, adjusting, revising to make sure you're hitting the mark. And so we are very confident in the path forward. There's always an opportunity for improvement.
Thank you. I appreciate that response. $6 million going out the door in 6 months. Are we confident that these organizations will have the ability to have the capacity, I should say, to spend it? And what happens if we don't spend these dollars? Dollars don't get spent by our contractors.
We have strategically structured the dollars so that the dollars that need to be spent right away can be spent right away. Out of those $6 million, there are dollars that extend beyond the March 31st. It's about $2.8 million that have to be spent right away. So strategically using them for things that can be spent immediately, like permanent supportive housing, rent supplements, are dollars we can get out the door right away.
Councillor Miyashiro.
Thanks, Mr. Spearman. Thank you very much, you three, for your presentation and the hard work that's going into this initiative. A question I have, understanding that the whole point of the RFSQ process, rather than do an RFP, was to enable Mr. Thompson and his staff to pull together organizations that have like proposals or similar thinking for service delivery, to bring them together and see if there's a way that they can collaborate, or if one can do it versus both of them trying to go for it, a way that they can work together or work with other organizations to deliver that service. Can you tell me if all the organizations that you listed for funding today, if there were other organizations that you had to work with in order to get to this point? So, for example, Volunteer Lethbridge, that's an easy one because there's no one else that does volunteer things. But if there was another organization that did the Civil Society Accelerator work that Volunteer Lethbridge did you work with that organization? So for all of these, you don't have to mention it, but can you tell me with confidence if for all of the the things that we're looking to fund today, that if there were similar organizations that put in proposals, did you work with all the organizations together to reach to this point?
So quickly, we're not done yet. So for round 2, there's still work that needs to be done, further analysis, further negotiation. Let me provide an example of, in this round, how we have worked with that collaborative consortium model. You'll notice in the permanent supportive housing model that we now have 3 organizations that have directly collaborated. We're calling it our PSH consortium, where they have extensive knowledge, research, and history, a deep vertical in delivering supportive housing. Together, they have instant access to doors. But arguably one of the most critical pieces in there is the Sikokitoki Friendship Society. The one thing that the consortium didn't have is that deep Blackfoot knowledge. So you'll notice in everything we do, we're injecting that collaborative and integrating that Blackfoot knowledge. So there is just an example of exactly what we set out to do. But keep in mind, you know, we may want to get here. We're here. We're not going to get there right away. You know, I would describe it a bit as baby steps, and that we're trying to do as much as we can. Again, can we evolve? Can we get better? Absolutely. And again, regarding the next allocations, we've got a very busy month ahead of us because we still in that time need to continue on with some of these collaborations and conversations that just aren't done yet. And so to answer your question, no, we haven't done it all. We're not done yet.
Councillor Croson.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Thank you all 3 for the presentation. Certainly a lot of information to grasp in here. I may have missed it in your presentation. I didn't find it in any of the readings. What precisely is a civil society accelerator? If we're going to be spending that kind of money, the public and we should know what that is.
I'm glad you asked that question. Civil society acceleration. We have great nonprofit organizations in Lethbridge with passionate people delivering great programs. Unfortunately, not all of them have the core infrastructure, policy, procedures, and support systems to allow them to be the best they can be because they have limited capacity or because they're brand new. Sometimes the organizations grow very fast because of an influx of program funding, but their core infrastructure cannot support this growth. Recognizing this, we want to set these organizations up for success by providing resources and support to help them in the areas such as board governance development, best practice policy and procedures relating to HR, performance management, reporting, etc., and a big one, volunteer development. This work is part of the mandate of Volunteer Lethbridge. Providing seed funding to support the development of a strong nonprofit sector is win-win for all of us and a strong investment for our future.
Okay, that explains what they're actually doing. How long are these contracts designed for? Are they one-year contracts? Are they multi-year?
So they are, our funding from the other levels of government is annual, okay? And so we must abide by that. But we are structuring these contracts so that they can continue on, you know, so that they don't have to, so they have that sustainability, that ability to grow, evolve, and do that work. Now, inherently, there's 3 reasons why we would stop a contract. Number 1, we don't have the money. And so that's going to be built right in the contract. If the federal, provincial governments cut the money off, we have no choice. Number 2, the need disappears. Right? Let's say for whatever reason that particular need disappears, then obviously we need to shift gears. And number 3, the third reason why we would change is the performance of the program or service or organization. And that's where the robust performance management comes into play. Now, if the money is there, they're doing a great job, and the need is still there, we're trying to then create some sustainability within these contracts. But because of the annual funding, there's always that, for lack of a better term, that caveat there.
A third question, if I may, Mayor Spearman.
Go ahead.
Can you provide me some of the performance indicators that you're going to be using in judging these contracts? So if it's about homelessness, what are the performance indicators that we will be judging success on?
So we have a list of all of that and some very technical information. So I'm going to let my team, because although I helped oversee the process, I didn't get involved in the actual technical analysis. I purposely excluded myself from that process to create more objectivity. So those details we have, but I'm going to turn it over to my team.
So I can start. Well, Brittany, you're more than welcome to come up and give some examples. But essentially what we did is on a per program basis, we looked at best practices and benchmarks for each of them. So for instance, a permanent supportive housing is going to have very different than civil society accelerator. Each of those were projected through financial modeling to see what kind of targets we could hit on a yearly and quarterly basis, and those became translated into contracts, the actual contract schedules. The other thing we did is applied a population lens to it so that we ensured that we were hitting our priority populations within the benchmarks as well, so seniors, children, Indigenous, etc. So those were the two basics, but if you pick a program, we can kind of list off. There's about 40 different indicators per program that they have to hit. So,
and you have targets for the indicators or just indicators?
It's indicators as well as targets. Absolutely, yeah. Now, some of them might be ambitious, but we know, so for ROI, we know what the benchmark ROIs would be in the sector. So we would, we would be asking questions if we weren't hitting those, but that's how we set them.
Yeah, so I can touch a little further on what Alina's speaking to. So in looking at our performance management within our social service agencies, we have, it's almost twofold. So looking at key performance indicators on system levels, but also on program level basis, and then also looking at our funder requirements in reporting. So it's a bit twofold in that. And so like Alina said, we've got a variety of key performance indicators on a system level, and then on program levels, and then within each program, we have applicable reporting such as acuity levels and returns to homelessness, percent diverted from homelessness, and so specific program reporting requirements as per our funder or within our system level for in alignment with the CWSS.
And to follow up on that, this is what you're getting from the organizations.
Yep.
Is there any evaluation being done from the client perspective?
Yep, you betcha. So that's part of our performance management. The implementation of our performance management is to develop quality assurance and impact to ensure impact, and that would include site visits, the collection of client feedback within our quality assurance. Yeah.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Kaufman.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Thank you very much, everyone, for the presentation and the ongoing work. 2 points of clarity before I ask my question. First, the response was just given. Was that to Councillor Crowson's question about round 2 and the evaluation?
No, that was about KPIs used for performance management.
I didn't get to questions on phase 2 yet, so that opens it for yourself.
Okay, I heard Dr. Turner mention looking at the priority populations, mentioning seniors and children. What we're doing here, though, is strictly on housing for phase 1, correct? So that's why I asked if it was phase 2 applicable.
I'll clarify. There's the projects that are coming forward to you for sure have a focus on using up the housing and homelessness dollars because, again, we're going to lose it if we don't spend it. However, in our KPIs and our targets for those investments, we are actually going after some demographic targets as well. So just because the adaptive case management program is using housing and homelessness dollars doesn't mean it's just going to only serve adults and not serve youth. It's actually it's a universal program. And that's primarily because there wasn't necessarily funding restrictions that were telling us, if you're this age, you need to go to this agency. If you're this age, you need to go to this. When we heard from the client perspective, it needed to be a seamless system, so we wanted to create supports that were flexible according to the client. So there actually is population level impacts that are part of this investment. What's happening in phase 2, though, is targeted investments that are specific to unique needs of those populations above and beyond what a universal system needs to capture. So population specialists would be something to expect in the next round to really amp that up.
Okay, thank you very much for that clarification. Second point was, Mr. Thompson, on your statement or your response to Councillor Carlson, you had stated that 2.8 million of the existing fund needs to be spent before March 31st. Was that a misquote?
No, we have, of this allocation today, 2.8 million must be spent by March 31st, 2021.
Okay, thank you. So it's just coincidental that there's approximately in phase 2 going to be 2.8 million, or approximately 2.8 million available.
Yes, and of course that is pending confirmation from some additional dollars from the federal government.
Thank you. How much of the funding that we received remains after we spend this approximate $6 million?
Without the pending federal influx of cash, approximately
yes,
approximately 2.1 million.
And where is that funding dedicated to go?
That funding is going to fund, as Dr. Turner said, what we're calling a population specialist model to support that universal system. So for example, it's going to be used to support programs to support children and families, seniors, and so forth. And it's primarily or almost exclusively FCSS dollars.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. That answers one of my other questions. So the 2.1 is on top, or is that part of the 2.8 you're referring to, or is the 2.8 recognizing it's not been committed? Is that an additional 2.8? I think this is where the uncertainty.
Yeah.
We're talking about the same numbers.
Yeah, so there's 2.1 that's still left in the bank right now if you all approve what's put forth today. That 2.1 could be 2.8 pending how the feds decide to dole out some of the new cash coming for COVID. So that 2.1 could be as high as 2.8, but we won't know until they make those decisions.
Okay, so it's not that we're getting a new influx of $2.8 million. No. It's that we could see an additional $700,000.
You got it.
Is what's being.
Yeah.
Okay, that needs to be. Okay, I appreciate that clarification. So the volunteer Lethbridge, how does that model? Can you just reassure if I missed it? How that fits into the concept of housing, or is that setting us up for something else?
So the volunteer Lethbridge is under the FCSS umbrella, and it's part of their, traditionally they have been supported through funding to develop the whole volunteer management system for our community. Now, and last year they were, in the previous generations, they were provided with about $114,000 per year to do so. Now, volunteer management and growing in that area is always important to our community. We have one of the most robust volunteer communities in Alberta, and we have to give credit ultimately for Volunteer Lethbridge for doing that. In addition to that, we're providing some additional dollars to go beyond the volunteer management piece to provide that civil society acceleration. Now, interestingly enough, that very much aligns with the provincial direction of the new government, where they're trying to basically enhance the capabilities of our civil society or nonprofit groups. They realize that, a lot of these are smaller organizations that don't have the infrastructure and access to resources like a large organization, say like United Way or national organizations. So providing some seed money in that civil society acceleration, I think is a very strategic investment for our entire community and a long-term investment. And so that money is FCSS dollars.
Thank you. So we've met all of our, or as much of our housing need as we can at this moment?
Yes, again, in
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Move on to Councillor Hagan.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Thank you very much for your presentation. A question has been asked to me various occasions is about the community engagement and the stakeholder engagement. Do you have a way to address this concern? So take, for example, do you know how it's done through other communities? The amount of time that we have spent, or this organization, the CWSS committee, has spent engaging with stakeholders and the community. Can you give me a little more information about that if you do have it?
Yes, ironically, in the council package, we included a CWSS communication and engagements document that highlights all of the levels of engagement that we've done. And this has been exponential. You know, the amount of engagement with all key stakeholders has been extremely robust. We thoroughly engaged all key stakeholders, including service providers, all levels of government, the business community, the general public, and administration. We did one-on-one meetings, interviews, focus groups, surveys, workshops, group meetings. The stakeholder group that was engaged the most by far was service providers. Our level of engagement and consultation was tenfold of what other communities have done. We can always look back and say, you know, could have we tweaked this, or could have we done that, or made a mistake? But again, this has been a 2-year journey of transformational change. If I could, I would go back and I would say I would correct this or maybe tweak that. But overall, we worked extremely hard to engage all stakeholders. And talking to my counterparts across the province, most of them submit an open RFP. They take that RFP, they evaluate it, take it directly to council, and then get it approved. As you know, the level of work we've done has been exponentially higher. And as we look forward, we are going to actually, one of our key findings from the survey we just did was that we are going to develop a formal and purposeful communication and engagement strategy. Now, we simply didn't have the staff or the horsepower to do that in the last little while, but we are dedicating resources to that to make sure that that is always front and center, and that you as council, the public, the government, and the service providers always have that portal of communication and engagement.
Thank you. I see it in the package, but I'm so thankful that you're able to explain that, because that has been one of the main questions that has come through to me on more than one occasion. So thank you for explaining that.
I'd like to ask a question about the slide, transforming the delivery system. If we can move back to that one. Thank you. So at the bottom of that slide, they talk about, you list the high needs, well, low needs, medium needs, and high needs. And certainly the high needs that are listed there are ones that are foremost in our community, ones that everybody's talking about. Addictions and mental health. Housing has been a big issue. We fully understand that housing is, the lack of housing is part of the problem, and provision of housing is part of the solution. In your proposal today and the money that will be spent by March 31st, what impact will Lethbridge residents and Lethbridge businesses see in terms of the impact on those social issues that we're currently facing and are the #1 issue in our community right now?
So with the funding that we're allocating today, again, we are trying to address some of those immediate pressures. And so first and foremost, we want to take those folks who have severe extreme needs, those folks that are in the park, addicted and using. We want to take those through our integrated coordinated access model, which by definition is an evidence-based approach to determining allocations to any third-party funded or government-delivered intervention, program, or service. All investment should flow through a consistent procurement and performance management process overseen by the local systems planning organization. At the highest level, the system, people are challenged to navigate that system of all those programs and services. Now, we have learned for a healthy, educated person, it is very daunting to access the right level of support at the right time. Can you only imagine if you are homeless, have FASD, mental illness, and addiction problems? And again, it's all three levels of government, not the service providers, that have created this system. We, the government, have created and funded this fragmented system. We've caused that, and we need to take a leadership role to fix it. Our new integrated coordinated access model employs system-wide program integration and coordination, easy access and navigation, a triage model that aligns the right level of support to the right level of need. So, to bring it all together, those folks in Galt Gardens, we connect to them with our new system. We assess them, triage them, and stabilize them in supportive housing. I don't even like to use the term permanent supportive housing. The goal is to get them housed and stabilize them with case management, get food in their belly, give them wraparound care to stabilize them, and so that then they can go into the addiction recovery continuum of care, right? It's almost impossible to take an individual who's struggling on the street, right? Think of a wild stallion that you're trying to make into a racehorse. You need to bring that animal in and you need to stabilize it, train it to get it to run. We need to bring those folks in and take care of them, stabilize them in that housing. And then with the new recent provincial funding for our recovery community, it aligns perfectly with that, because then they can go into detox, treatment, recovery housing. Now, once they get out of recovery housing, and we're not funding all of that, but that's the beauty of this model. We're integrating with those other groups so that the system is there. Now, once they get out of recovery housing, they still have FASD, they still have brain damage, they still have medical and physical problems. So you can't just let them go, or most likely they're going to be back doing what they were doing. So we have to supplement it then with post-treatment supportive housing to give them that light structure and care to make sure that they don't backslide. So this is part of a bigger system, and we are confident that over a period of time, you're going to start to see a dent in the problems in our community. Now, we need to work collaboratively with the Alberta government to get the addiction recovery piece going. And as you know, we're working on that. And so foundational to all of the work we're doing is that it is about well-being and recovery. It's not just about continuing just to house people and not getting them into that recovery continuum of care. That's the magic.
Okay, I just want a quick answer to the next question. Hey,
All right.
we're going to start a process. The government has committed to provide resources, but those resources don't currently exist. They were announced, but they don't exist at the moment.
Yeah.
So we start this process. What happens? We have limited access to detox, 8 beds at the regional hospital. How do we start this process and maintain it and be successful given the limitations beyond this first step?
So by spending money in getting people into that permanent or that stabilization housing, even if they never go into the addiction continuum of care, research clearly shows the level of incidents and problems goes down 70%.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Can I take a stab at that one? I'm
Sure.
sorry. I just
Okay.
put it back to the triangle. There was a slide that had a triangle on it, because I think this is really important, and I think this is what the community is going to ask you guys too, is what's this money going to do right now, because this is the pressure point. Oh, next one, sorry. Okay, no, go up. Yeah, that one. Okay, so what we found, and I'm sorry, this is bugging me. What we found in the research is that there's about 150 folks that are constantly tapping all of your services, and that's really the core. The data is showing us that. What we said is, no matter how we spin this, the GOA might come in later. And so what we need to do is build the skeleton of the system so that when that money comes in, we can plug it in. So the investment in ACM, so the adaptive case management, is going after that 150 plus. The permanent supportive housing, those are new units. Those 65 beds are going to cycle people. The 3-year financial modeling shows us that we would essentially eliminate that chronic homeless population just in the city's investment. If we actually stick to our KPIs, stick to our quality, we have enough in the system to manage this. We're still going to obviously have a gap in detox, that's fine, but that doesn't mean we need to let people linger until that part of the system comes online. So this would, like you were saying, unlock it, get us going, relieve the pressure on the street, and ensure that these clients are not, further descending into poor well-being and poor health. So hopefully that helps answer your question.
Thank you. We want to end the cycle of dependency.
Exactly.
Perfect. Yeah. Councillor Croson.
Thank you, Your Worship. A couple more questions to follow up. We're trying, of course, to look at things strategically and holistically, and we're getting phase 1 today and phase 2 in a month or so. Can you just explain I know the answer, but can you explain to the public why we're not getting both phases together? Because that would be much easier to do as one.
So the primary reason is we know we need to get money out the door. So we have homelessness funding that must be spent no later than March 31st, 2021, and we need to get this money out the door. And so if we wait a month to do this, it takes about a month and a half to do contracts, which puts us right smack dab in the middle of Christmas. And we know you can write off 2-3 weeks there. So then you're into mid-January before those, people are on holidays. And so that gives you roughly 2.5 months to spend that money. If we can get this core funding allocated today, we can get those programs up and running well before Christmas to get people going and get those programs going.
Does not the province do rent supplements? So you've asked us to put, $500,000 towards rent supplements? Doesn't the province do that already?
The province does, but they have significantly cut their rent supplements. I don't have the exact numbers, but we've got Rob and James here. I believe they've been cut from the provincial level in half. Rent supplements are, remember, our community it's affordability that's the problem. It's not necessarily the doors, it's to be able to afford those doors. So rent supplements gives us immediate affordability for those clients. Now again, this is provincial money through the Municipal Block Fund that must be spent by December 31st, 2021. So it ties in nicely with the permanent supportive housing piece, and it creates, again, it's addressing homelessness and creating affordability.
Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Thank you all for the time you're taking and the information provided. It is a $6 million investment, so I understand that we do need to do our due diligence and sort of probe deeply. And my question is around the $6 million, maybe through you, Your Worship, to City Manager or Designate, or maybe the presenters can answer this. I believe Council did put some dollars from the Municipal Block Funding, OSSI, FCSS at $1,624,000. Is that being used in this funding allocation, or was that previously used?
So our, and the city contributes $700,900 towards the FCS program as part of that 80-20 split. And so any dollar that's FCSS dollars that's allocated, again, 80% comes from the government, 20% from the city. And so the bulk or the vast majority of that money is coming in round 2, which is where that portion of the city dollars would be utilized. The other portion that the city contributed was the rent supplement dollars, but that again was not city dollars. That was flow through. That was through the provincial government, and you simply gave approval to use that money for rent supplements to create housing affordability.
Okay, and thank you for that, because it leads me to my second question. Just for clarity here at the table and in community, this $5.96 million, is it almost entirely other orders of government flow through dollars? I think that needs to be, there was a lot of information. I couldn't find actually the financials on that and where the funding is coming from. So can we be fairly clear on where these dollars are actually coming from?
Yes, I don't have the exact percentage, but it's in the high 90%, 95%-ish, that is simply a flow through of other levels of government. I believe I'm between 95 and 97% are other government level dollars.
200 is City of Lethbridge contribution. The balance is out of 8 million, but today's is 6 million, right? So most of it, it's almost exclusively provincial, federal.
Thank you, and I think that needs to be fairly clear to community, is that these are dollars that are targeted from other orders of government to address these concerns in our community. And so it's not City Council finding another $6 million somewhere. These are dollars we have that need to get out in community to do the work, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Councillor Miyashiro.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since we're talking about money, both Dr. Turner and Mr. Thompson stated that there's between $2.1 and $2.8 million left for 2021 for the rest of the services. To the city treasurer, what's the budget for FCSS for 2021?
2.6 million was your FCSS budget, 2.57.
Thank you. So if there's $2.6 million left for FCSS budget for the next upcoming year, why wouldn't there be 2.4 million left?
Yeah, there's some FCSS dollars that were allocated to the Civil Society Accelerated Volunteer Lethbridge.
200,000, right? So then there should be 2.4 at least definitely left for FCSS.
Civil Society Accelerator, sorry. And ICA, the Integrated Coordinated Access, has preventative aspects as well. So so what's left is 2.1.
Oh, one other thing. In your one of your graphics, you had the well-being screener was going to be a phone app. What kind of platform is that? Like, is it just some questions you answer from, you log into something and ask a bunch of questions?
And again, it's going to be something we'll do with community, but there's a lack right now of an integrated information management system. So ETO is being used in some community, in some service agencies, and FCSS, there's nothing right now. So there is a plan to work with the selected agencies to choose a platform for integrated information management, because that's going to feed the performance tracking at the client delivery level as well. But again, there's no point in doing that before they get the contract signed, because you want to choose something that's going to work for the service providers.
Is this connected to HelpSeeker?
It could be. It could be. HelpSeeker is really a system mapping software versus what that's referring to as information management at the client level. So it's a difference between a CRM and a system mapping platform. But yeah, they could operate together for sure.
Just for clarity then, if the individual doesn't have the capacity to do the screening on their own, it would go to someone in an organization to help them with the screening?
Exactly, and hence the population specialist would be quite critical to that model as well.
Or an organization that actually works with that client group?
Yeah, exactly.
Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you all to the incredible amount of work that you've done. It's really been remarkable seeing all the avenues you've gone down to come up with this. I just wanted to touch on something from some organizations that were disappointed in hearing that there was a lot of dysfunction amongst the organizations themselves. And the recent pandemic, they say, showed that they did, in fact, work very well together. So I'm just wondering if you can comment on that kind of feeling among some of the organizations.
So, as articulated in the presentation, a lot of that dysfunction and fragmentation is not caused by the organizations, rather the government. You know, we as 3 levels of government come out with these eclectic, diverse funding pots that don't connect the dots. And then we, in essence, then fund these organizations on all of these one-offs. They do great work, very passionate, good people. And so that's why we need to take a leadership role to fix that system, to allow them to be the best they can be to deliver those services. Now, COVID was a great example on how that system could work. We made a very purposeful effort, the City of Lethbridge, to basically pilot this project. We used Help Seeker, we used the model, and to create that integrated pod model where we integrated funding. And you're right, absolutely, it demonstrated this really does work.
So moving forward, you feel that there can still be a lot of collaboration amongst a lot of the agencies?
Absolutely. It's again, us as levels of government working together to help build that system to set them up for success.
Thank you.
My queue is empty. Are there any further questions from council?
Yes, Mayor Spearman, Councillor Kaufman.
Okay, Councillor Kaufman, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Thank you, everyone, for continually answering the questions. I just need, again, some clarity. The more you answer, the more questions that come up. So I'll just plant that little seed with you there. For clarification, we've got approximately 700,000 as part of our 80-20. That is included in the numbers that you're giving for FCSS for 2021, correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Now, as I just heard, however, the ICA, we're taking money out of the 2 point whatever we have left over and putting that towards the ICA?
No, the 2.1 million has not yet been allocated. That is what's coming in the next round.
Okay, so the 2.1 you have stated twice already, 3 times already in this presentation is going towards FCSS. So we're not going to see anything else coming out of that then?
No. I would have to take a detailed look at every allocation, and because keep in mind, we're still working with these agencies to finalize the agreements and the programs.
Yeah, but we should have no difficulty with $2.1 million in FCSS spending in our community for 2021, correct?
That's correct.
Excellent, thank you. Just a question then on that, would 311 not be our, a big part of our access to these? Would somebody not pick up the phone and just dial 311?
It's definitely part of the game plan to bring them into the ICA model so that those operators know how to make appropriate referrals. That would be part of the strategy, but that's comms and training.
Excellent.
Yeah, good one.
Yeah, thank you.
Taxes,
thank you.
the tax letters that we did last year.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, another source. Thank you. Slide 5, you have indicated at the bottom at the sort of the nexus of those 5 buttons, $28 million over 4 years. You've divided this into rounds though, and I think part of the concern in the community is this year 1, is it year 2, or are we just spending 28 over 4 years, but we might spend 27 this year and then break out the rest? Can you just clarify what you mean by $28 million over 4 years?
Mm-hmm.
When you take all of those pots of monies over 4 years, the total amount we have to allocate over 4 years is approximately $28 million.
but there's not going to be any consistency necessarily in terms of it'll be 6 this year, 6 next year, 6 the year after that.
Absolutely. Like this year was a huge year. Next year, we never know with the provincial and federal budgets. Maybe they cut. We just don't know.
Okay, thank you. On that point then, you've got the new button on the left-hand side, COVID social supports, reaching home. That wasn't included in the 28 million earlier. Are we waiting for additional funding for that? Have we contributed funding from that?
Yes, we have. Under the ECC process, we did allocate specific COVID-related dollars to the community.
But that was outside the 28 million. That's really not part of the 28 million. That's just an additional funding source?
Exactly.
Okay, so we've included it, but it's not really part of.
You know, all of these could be easily solved if you guys just saw the spreadsheet of sources of dollars per program investment, because I think that's, no? Too much TMI? Okay, too much information. I'm like, I can answer that. I could answer that. But, okay.
Okay. Thank you. I think that's the extent. Thank you, Mayor Spearman.
Councillor Higgin.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. A question I have, oh, we're off of the slide now. I think it's called, is it Help Seeker, which kind of integrates these different things. Now, understanding software changing on a regular basis, do we know that this developer is going to be around? Is it our program? Is it, like, who owns Help Seeker and how?
I do.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Dr. Turner.
Well, not me personally, but yes, I'm the president of a software company that produces technology, and one of those that is a product that we have, and we can say that we do have sustainable federal funding for that for the long haul. So you can.
Okay, I know things changing. I was just curious to know. So that's your company then. So
it's under, so we have a $12,000 license agreement per year with the city of Lethbridge for premium access to the software backend, so a lot of the data that you guys get comes from that system, and so but then it's also free on the front end as well. So it's a social tech model.
Multiple communities, so we get an understanding of what.
Precisely, it's in about 200 communities and soon to be scaled nationally.
Okay, and similar with the backends that we're doing, or is this the free version?
All of it. Both free and premium. Yeah.
All right.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Deputy Mayor Kaufman.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. So, I just need to make sure we are very upfront, very transparent then about all of this. We're talking about signing on to an ICA, and Dr. Turner Odensor is I'll call you a director for lack of a better definition at the moment.
No, I think
something that.
Yeah, sorry to
navigate.
So Help Seeker is an app. Yeah, Help Seeker is an app.
Yep.
ICA is what's required of you guys to have, which is a coordinated access system. Those are two separate things. So.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. So Help Seeker fits in there, and as I heard Mr. Thompson describe, we'd be looking for some platform to deliver, one of which would be Help Seeker.
The platform he was referring to is a CRM, which is a client information management system. And Help Seeker is not that. Help Seeker is just a systems mapping platform that tracks services. It doesn't track clients, for instance. So it's the software. You guys are missing a software that's actually going to track the client, each unique client, the performance for each client, where the client goes. That's what's called a CRM, a customer relations management software. ERM if you're in the health world. So that's a kind of a different product. A product like that would be like Salesforce or HubSpot, whoever provides your health records. So it's a different type of platform. Help Seeker's not that.
Okay, thank you. I'll get my response from the solicitor offline. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, are there any further questions from council? I see none. I will ask our presenters to take seats in the audience while we deal with the resolution. I have a resolution from Councillor Crowson. Lethbridge Community Wellbeing and Safety Strategy, Round 1 Funding Allocations. Be it resolved that City Council receive this presentation as information. And further be it resolved that the Council allocate $5,981,529.91 in Round 1 of the Integrated Request for Supplier Qualifications, RFSQ. Process leveraging funds from Family Community Support Services, FCSS, Outreach Support Services Initiative, OSSI, Reaching Home, RH, and City of Lethbridge to address community well-being and safety within Lethbridge. And further be it resolved that $1,212,120.67 of the $5,981,529.91 be awarded to the Canadian Mental Health Association, Alberta South Region, for integrated coordinated access. And further be it resolved that $1,505,176.30 of the $5,981,529.91 be awarded to the Canadian Mental Health Association, Alberta South Region, for adaptive case management. And further be it resolved that $274,240 of the $5,981,529.91 be awarded to the Young Women's Christian Association, YWCA, Lethbridge and District, for Hestia Youth Housing as part of the Permanent Supportive Housing Consortium. And further be it resolved that $943,559 of the $5,981,529.91 be awarded to the Young Women's Christian Association, YWCA, Lethbridge and District, for men's housing as part of the Permanent Supported Housing Consortium. And further be it resolved that $550,400 of the $5,981,529.91 be awarded to the Young Women's Christian Association, YWCA, Lethbridge and District, for women's housing as part of the Permanent Supportive Housing Consortium. And further be it resolved that $523,543 of the $5,981,529.91 be awarded to the Southern Alberta Self-Help Association, SASHA, as part of the Permanent Supportive Housing Consortium. And further be it resolved that $249,169 of the $5,981,529.91 be awarded to the Siko-Katoki Friendship Society to provide Blackfoot program supports to all permanent supportive housing clients. And further be it resolved that $219,434.38 of the $5,981,529.91 be awarded to Volunteer Lethbridge for the Civil Society Accelerator. And further be it resolved that $503,887.56 of the $5,981,529.91 be awarded to Lethbridge Housing Authority for housing supports rent supplements. And further be it resolved that the Mayor and the City Clerk be authorized to sign the appropriate annual fee for service funding agreements, subject to annual review and renewal at the discretion of the City of Lethbridge, pending available funding from the Government of Alberta and the Government of Canada. And further be it resolved that Martin Thompson, Dr. Alina Turner, and Richard Thiessen be thanked for their presentation. Councillor Crowson.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman, and thank you for reading all of that. So, of course, we just had a fulsome conversation about it. We asked a lot of questions. As my colleagues know, this is flow-through money that's coming from the Government of Alberta and the Government of Canada, with some money kicked in from the City of Lethbridge. And then the process went through basing it on our community well-being and safety strategy and our housing strategy, seeing how we could most effectively, following their recommendations, use this money. It is process-based. We know it is a change from the past, but this is spending the money in a way that should get us very fast turnaround. The groups that we are working with have access to doors right away, so we can get immediate action, deal with some of the homeless issues that we are dealing with, and make sure that people are stabilized and have the supports we need. So unless there are questions or comments, I will open for debate.
Okay. Are there any questions? Okay. Okay, so we'll move on to debate.
I will say that as my opening and go from there.
Okay, Councillor Miyashiro.
Thank you very much, Mayor Spearman. This has been a lot of work for CSD, and I express my appreciation for the work that you've done so far. I think it's good that we get this money out. It would have been great if it would have been more clear that this had to be spent right away, because it was money that had a time limit to it. My only other comment, and I will support this, my only other comment is when you bring the next set of fundings here, please have all the numbers ready. Please make sure you know exactly what you're spending and how, because you're going to get the same questions you got today, and it just helps speed things along if you guys have all that at your fingertips. But thank you for the work you've done.
Thank you. Councillor Carlson.
Mayor Spearman, I won't add to any of the previous debate, but I want to add my thanks to the CWSS Advisory Committee. I have been part of FCSS under CSD allocations for many years. I know how much work it is, and I thank you for all your work and the time you've given. So thank you.
Any further comments from councillors in debate?
Yes, Deputy Mayor Kaufman.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. I will echo the words of Councilor Miyashiro. Part of being the board of directors for the organization, and certainly the board that's responsible now for WSS, is to be able to understand the flows, understand how we are approaching things holistically. We recognize that there is funding coming from different sources. There are a lot of balls in the air, as they say. However, coordinated efforts and coordinated presentation to this body, in my mind, I think would help us help alleviate some of the angst and some of the concern amongst us, and definitely to echo Councillor Miyashiro, in the community as well, so that there's certainty. I was under the impression going into this that actually all of the funds that were available needed to be spent before March 31st. I didn't realize it's only a smaller portion. That said, this is for housing, which has an incredible need within our community, and a need that's not going to go away. So I will recognize the funding sources, recognizing the funding need, and support the motion as it's presented. I would just like to see our next and future presentations to be more coordinated and more strategic in how they're presented.
Thank you. I too will be supporting the motion. I know there's some controversy in the community. We need to begin to address effectively some of the social problems in the city of Lethbridge. I'm assured by the presenters today that this will be the first step in addressing those issues. And we haven't had clear direction for a long time. This puts us on the path to resolving those issues in the city. I hear from residents, I hear from businesses. We need to do our part to move this forward, and I thank you for your presentation today, and I will be supporting the motion. I see no further people in the queue, so I will ask Councillor Crowson to close.
I will echo what many others said. From a strategic and holistic point of view, as I said in the questions, to have everything together, to have all that information. Yes, you might think it's too much information, but there is no such thing as too much information for me, because I need that to make better decisions. So the better information we have, but understanding the timelines here, of course, that this has to move forward, knowing phase 2 is coming. This is something that we need to get done. We have been warned that it's a long, cold winter coming up ahead of us, though October doesn't have that yet. So we need to get housing in place as quickly as possible. I am so glad to see metrics and evaluations as part of this. We know a lot of work from administration and from council have gone into this. The housing strategy is feeding into this. The community safety or well-being and safety strategy is feeding into this. There is so much information that has been gathered that we have used, and now we have the process in place to move ahead. So I will ask my colleagues to support this so we can get this out there and support the residents of Lethbridge. With that, I'll call the question.
Question has been called. All in favor? Councillor Morrow?
Favor.
Councillor Kaufman?
In favor?
Okay, that is unanimous. Thank you. It's now a little bit 3:01. Council want to take a 5-minute break? Okay, all right, we'll take a break at this time and we'll return in approximately 5 minutes. Going to call the meeting back to order. As we begin the meeting, I'm going to ask Acting Mayor Parker to make an introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I really appreciate that. And as most people know, members of council have the privilege of working with a councilor's assistant. And over the last 4 to 5 months, we have been void of that position. And we did go through a very thorough process in looking for someone to fill that position. And I'm very proud to welcome Carleen Betterich to our city. She comes with a vast background. And now members of council probably haven't had the opportunity to meet her yet. And some of the staff have not been able to meet her in that we're in this crazy time called COVID-19. And you may not recognize her because she has a mask on her face, just like most of us. But I just want to welcome Carleen here. I know you'll be a great addition to our team. And as most people know, the councilor assistant works with both the city clerk's department, but most importantly with members of council in doing research. It's numerous scheduling, and it's a big responsibility, but I know that you'll be the right choice. And I know that our city clerk's department did a wonderful job as well through HR in screening all the applicants. And I'm proud to say that you are for sure the cream of the crop. So thank you very much and welcome to the city of Lethbridge. Thank you, Carleen, for being here.
Welcome, Carleen. With that, we'll move on to our agenda and we'll go to our second presentation. I'm going to invite Mr. Trevor Butler, General Manager of IT, to present to us on the Intelligent Community Update. So. And Mr. Butler, if you'd like to introduce your co-presenter.
Thank you. And Ms. Vicki Bennett is joining me today, and we'll be presenting much of the materials that we have. So thank you, Mayor and Council, for the opportunity to join you today and to present a brief update on the Intelligent Community Initiative and some of the progress that we've made. Next slide, please. I do, before I begin, would like to recognize some of the folks that work with us in this initiative. Mr. Hawkins as our executive sponsor, Ms. Bennett as our program manager, who will be presenting to you today, and Mr. Lewington from Economic Development Lethbridge. I'd also like to recognize the 22-member steering committee that we've worked with for the last 5 or 6 years that represent a number of leaders across our community who have had insight, who've provided insight and feedback on the work that we have done, and also our citizens at large who've had multiple opportunities to engage in these processes and provide their insight. Next slide, please. As a high-level agenda today, I'll share a few comments just as an overview of what we are working to accomplish with the Intelligent Community Program, and then Ms. Bennett will share some of the initiatives and some of the things that we see and project in the future. Next slide, please. Thank you. So in November of 2014, Council approved N27, or the Intelligent Community Initiative, which was a key partnership with Economic Development Lethbridge, as we were working to develop an environment in our community that provided digital connectivity, sustained a knowledge workforce, promoted innovation, supported digital inclusion so that no one was left behind, and that maximized the opportunity for us to share our story through marketing and advocacy. It was an opportunity to create an ecosystem where our community could thrive in an ever-increasing digital world. And as we know, that digital world has changed significantly since 2014. Next slide, please. When we started, those previous things that I mentioned were known as the 5 pillars of an intelligent community, which were the guiding principles that we followed to work through this framework. And shortly after we began in 2015, a 6th pillar was added to this, which was that of sustainability, which I think was quite appropriate. It is important to note that connectivity is the foundation of the other pillars. And over the last few years, we've been working on a number of different initiatives to move forward on our intelligent community vision, and I'll turn the time over to Ms. Bennett to share some of those initiatives that we've undertaken and accomplished.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor and Council, and thank you, Mr. Butler, for allowing me to, by way of something of a celebration, speak to you about the major projects that we have undertaken in the last few years in the Intelligent Community Program. Next slide, please. The first major project that we undertook was the Intelligent Community Roadmap. This was built by our community-wide Intelligent Community Steering Committee. In the 2015-16 awards cycle, the Intelligent Community Forum designated the City of Lethbridge as an intelligent community with the Smart 21 award. We've also developed, next slide please, the connectivity strategy and public fiber strategy. And in November of 2015, we published the Open Data Portal. Recognizing our partnership with EDL, they led the brand research and development portion of the Intelligent Community Initiative. In 2018, we participated in the federal government's Smart Cities Challenge. And finally, under major projects is one that City Council has not seen yet. We are scheduled to come and present this to you in a couple of weeks. It is the Digital Transformation Master Plan. It is known in N27 as the Online Services Delivery Strategy. There's a few things that happened between the time an online services delivery strategy was thought of and we started working on it. And within that arrow icon you see there, those are outlined and really explain the difference between the two. First of all, our citizens' expectations have changed with regards to how technology is used and how they expect to receive online services. That acronym FANG stands for Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, and Google. These are the multi-billion-dollar corporations that are setting the standards and setting our citizens' expectations for online services. So how can we, as a mid-sized municipality, meet our customers' expectations without being a multi-billion-dollar corporation? Secondly, there's been a significant shift of use of mobile devices, not only for citizens getting data, getting information, but actually making financial transactions. There's also been a key desire to move from an electronic process to digital processes. And an example of the difference would be, an electronic process would be if you go to the city's website, you download a schedule or a calendar of some sort, it's a PDF file, you print it out, put it on your fridge. You have achieved that, or consumed that data through an electronic process because you used your computer to do it. A digital process would be if you got that same information and it came with calendar updates to your cell phone or push notifications to your phone. So there's a key difference between electronic and digital. And the final key difference is instead of just putting existing municipal services online in disparate places, that we appear as one city from the citizens' perspective, and they can go to one place for all of their online municipal services. Next slide, please. But just because we have achieved all of our N27 initiatives, that doesn't mean the Intelligent Community Initiative is over, and we have a lot of things to do in the future. And that will start with EDL continuing to work on the branding and marketing piece. The next slide. We thank Council for their support, especially in the special meeting last week on connectivity, as a connectivity pilot has been proposed and now funding options are being explored. In the next slide, we have opportunities to further leverage our open data portal, allowing both city administration and our citizens to make data-driven decisions. This aligns nicely with the next slide, which is innovation, specifically around the fiscal and operational performance review initiatives. And the next slide is about actually executing on the Digital Transformation Master Plan, which again will be presented in just a couple of weeks. And finally, being aware of the emerging technologies that are coming and again, changing our citizens' expectations of how they use technology and expect to receive municipal services. One example is 5G. We know this is coming. We know the technologies that are associated with that, such as driverless vehicles, are yet to be fully understood, but we need to be aware of what's coming, how they might change our citizens' expectations, and how we need to adjust to meet those expectations. That concludes our presentation. I'm happy to take any questions.
Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Thank you both for the presentation and the update. Appreciate it. Question around the connectivity piece. Council did make a fairly large investment recently in that. Recently, the Canadian Infrastructure Bank, I believe, made a couple of announcements key to our city and region. I think it was, one was around irrigation and agriculture, which I think is key, but the other was around better access to high-speed internet and broadband. Do we have any details on that and how we may push forward that connectivity piece a bit more through this?
Of course, yes. It was just actually last week we met with Ms. Holly Salu, who's the Executive Director of Telecommunications with Service Alberta, and that was one of the things that she brought up was the infrastructure bank opportunity, and we actually talked through 3 or 4 other opportunities with her. So we're connecting at the provincial level so we can understand what those opportunities are that our Prime Minister has announced. But the details are really yet unknown. She wasn't able to provide much more than what you could, what was announced online.
I agree. I haven't been able to find many details. I know that the Canadian Infrastructure Bank is looking for a 2 or 3 times multiplier to their investment, and I'm just wondering if our investment could have been used to leverage those dollars, or if that's still possible. But I think those details will come out. And
yeah, we don't know as of yet. There is a major focus around rural and rural remote, and there's a lot of federal money for that. And so we don't know what those criteria and those constraints are quite yet.
Thank you. I think the federal government still classifies us as rural, I think, because of our size. I'm not sure. I don't know if we're remote. No?
Yeah, we tend not to hit the category of rural or rural remote when we look at the other grants.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. When's the last time the community board got together?
The steering committee?
Yeah, the 22 members.
It's probably been about 2 years. And that is something that's actually been on my mind, that especially as we look for an update on our Intelligent Community Roadmap, we'll have to go out to our steering committee members and see how much progress they've made, recognizing that the roadmap, city administration is responsible for about 40% of it, and then other members of the community for about 60%. So we'll have to go back to them for an update.
And when it comes to intelligent communities or smart cities, usually have some practical examples. What are we working on? Do we have a practical implementation that anybody's going to implement in the next 12 to 24 months?
As far as smart cities go?
Yeah, specific projects, ones that would benefit businesses or citizens. How will they use the data? You know, how will the community benefit from this? How will it be an economic development tool, for example?
Sure. So open data is probably one of the better examples of that, where we're almost on a weekly basis. We're seeing contracts that are coming through where different developers that are engaging on projects with the city are looking for that data so they can do their own planning and their own responses to the work that's going on around the community.
Okay. Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thanks for the presentation. Just how big of a deal is broadband? How important is that in smart cities looking forward? I mean, is this way up on top of priorities?
Yeah, that's why when we show that slide, it's the 6 pillars. That's why everything starts from connectivity. So there's lots of work going on in different municipalities with smart city, which is around measuring how services are going. Lots in the utility side of things. Without connectivity, those smart, we call them smart devices that are on what's called the edge, don't have the ability to communicate. So you can't actually capture that data. And so that's why connectivity is absolutely foundational, which is why we focus on that point.
Councillor Miyashiro.
Thank you, Mr. Spearman. Thank you very much for presenting again on this initiative. Just to, a couple of us were involved right from the beginning, Councillor Hagan and myself, but some of the others at the table might not remember exactly what the end goal was for the Intelligent Communities Initiative. Can you just, 35 seconds, what's the end goal of this initiative?
I can take that one. The goal was to create an ecosystem where our community can advance and can thrive as I don't want to use the word market, but as the world changes, as things become increasingly digital, not to be left behind in those advances.
Were we still, if we get the right connectivity system in place and maybe a fiber optic backbone, will we still be applying to be an intelligent community, get designated as intelligent community?
That's definitely something that we can do. The steps that we've taken there, as been mentioned, we applied early on to see where we were. We were recognized at the Smart 21 at that point in time. We went further to get a more detailed report card so that we knew the areas that we needed to focus on. So once we addressed connectivity, that was the really big gap that we needed to work on. Then we can return back to that forum and to continue to pursue that accreditation.
And the advantage of getting recognized as an intelligent community in the world, what's the advantage to doing that?
I think it tells part of our story on the marketing and advocacy side of things. From the economic piece, as many of the communities that become intelligent communities, as an opportunity to bring different business in, is connectivity is really important. And I think it tells the story that we want to innovate and we want to think about the opportunities that are out there and seize them.
And the last question is, with the rollout of 5G in the next few years, let's say, and the next generation of connectivity, does that, and it's a Wi-Fi technology more or less, right?
Cellular, yeah.
Is there a need then to still look at having a fiber optic backbone if 5G is the new 5G cellular connectivity is the new thing?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So 5G is the next iteration of cellular. Everybody today has LTE, which is 4G. And when you first got your iPhone, it was probably 3G. And so that's the next iteration for greater bandwidth on those devices. And there is an opportunity potentially that's out there to deliver Wi-Fi services across that. And we're working with the different telecom providers that are putting this in. Rogers has announced that they intend to come to the city of Lethbridge. And even in the large fiber strategy that we did, that's an opportunity. It's still fairly out there, but the important thing to remember is 5G has to connect to fiber. That's how it's served. And so that backbone is still vitally important, whether it's 4G, whether it's 5G, or other methods of wireless communication.
Thank you.
Any further questions from council? I see none, so we'll ask our presenters to take a seat in the audience and we'll deal with the resolution. I have a resolution from Councillor Miyashiro, Intelligent Community Update. Be it resolved that City Council receive this presentation as information, and further be it resolved that Vicky Bennett and Trevor Butler be thanked for their presentation. Councillor Miyashiro?
Questions?
I see none.
And I'll start debate by saying I'm really excited at where this initiative has come in the last 5-6 years. I think we're on the cusp of something that will be different from what people in Lethbridge have seen. I think we're on the cusp of something that will elevate Lethbridge to a new level of engagement with our citizens and with the region. And I think this initiative will be transformational. That's my opening for debate.
Question's been called. All in favor? Online? Councillor Morrow? Councillor Kaufman? Did we lose connection with the Councillor Morrow and Kaufman?
Can you hear us?
Yeah. Are you in favor?
Can you hear us now?
Yes.
So you heard my OGs? Yeah, yes. I think we're operating under protocol, Mayor Spearman, that if you don't hear anything from us, we're in favor. But thank you for checking in.
Okay. Okay, that is unanimous. Thank you. We'll move on to submissions. I have a resolution from Councillor Croson. Agenda Timelines Implementation Framework. Be it resolved that Council direct the city manager to implement the following agenda timeline initiatives effective January 1, 2021. 1, a 7-day agenda publication period with the Agenda Review Committee meetings scheduled on Thursdays. 2, meetings of City Council to occur on Tuesdays. 3, the combination of community issues and committee meetings and City Council meetings on the same day if the Standing Policy Committee model is not approved by Council. Returning to Council with amendments to Bylaw 5411, the procedure bylaw by December 14th, 2020. Councillor Crowson.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. So earlier this year, Council passed a resolution to move to a 7-day agenda, but we asked administration, the city manager, to prepare an implementation plan. And what is before us today is the implementation framework that is being suggested. Administration has developed this framework that identifies changes and suggested impacts. So what is outlined there is suggesting moving meetings to Tuesday. CIC and Council will be on the same day if the Standing Policy Committees are not moved forward. So just to be aware that there would be one full Monday with the CIC in the morning and Council meetings in the afternoon. This will provide us better governance and community input, because having the greater time will allow Council to better prepare for meetings. They'll have time to research, they'll have time to clarify things with administration, and more importantly, they'll have time to converse with constituents and reach out to the public, because the agenda will be public. People will know what's on there, and people will have time. And as I said, this will help us with the governance issues. For implementation, things that will have to move forward, as noted, there will have to be amendments to the procedure bylaw, changes to the Council calendar, changes to Council's individual schedules if anybody has their Tuesdays booked, and changes to some of the BCC meetings if they're also booked on the same days as when our new Council meetings would be. So this is what is being suggested, and if approved, this would move forward to be in place by, well, the bylaw will be before us in December, but the other changes would be made for the January 1st for our new Council calendar. So with that information, I will open for questions if any of my colleagues have questions on this.
Are there any questions? I see none. It seems fairly straightforward.
Yeah, as I said, we've already approved moving to a 7-day. This is just how it will lay out. This gives everybody a chance to understand where we're moving ahead. It is part of the governance review that we're undergoing. And again, more changes might become, well, not changes coming, more recommendations from OEG will be coming as we move forward with the SPC model and things like that. But step by step, the governance implementations are happening, and this is one piece. And I will ask for my colleagues' support on this.
Okay. Any debate? Councillor Miyashiro?
Great. I'd just like to thank Councillor Crowson, OEG, and the clerk's office for the work they've done on this, and hopefully it'll work out for everybody. I will support this.
I'll just say change is good. Okay, there's no further debate. Close.
Well, to echo everyone, thank you to the city clerk and her office and everybody else in administration who's worked on this, because it does mean changes to staff schedules and lots of other things as well. But as I said, most importantly, this gives more time to dialogue with the public so they can have more input on the agendas. And with that, I will call the question.
Question's been called. All in favor? Silence online means approval. It's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, submissions 5.2 to 5.6 have been referred to budget, so we're moving on to 5.7. I have a resolution from Deputy Mayor Kaufman, administrative prioritization for CIP. Be it resolved that City Council approve the proposed prioritization criteria for Capital Improvement Program 2022 to 2031, Community Project Section D, as provided in Attachment 3. Deputy Mayor Kaufman.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Members of council, recall we had this conversation, seems like it was last week, but maybe it was longer, talking about the prioritization criteria for our Section D projects. It's pretty much the same as what we've carried over in the past. The difference being we've added one additional category with a slightly higher weighting of 2 when you're weighting the projects, dealing with project planning. And this is to address or to recognize comprehensive planning that's been done by a proposed or behind and supporting a proposed project. If we have things that are shovel ready for funding, we need to be taking advantage of that and looking at that as we judge and weigh the value of projects against each other. I'll open it to questions. If there are no questions, I'll consider that opening debate, please.
Are there any questions for Councillor Kaufman? I see none. It's opening debate. Any debate? I see none. Go ahead and close.
Question.
Question's been called. All in favor? Any opposed? There are none. (5.8), I have a resolution from Councillor Crowson. Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls, MMIWG, draft recommendations. Be it resolved that City Council refer this item to administration to review and develop a plan and report back to Council by December 14th, 2020. Councillor Crowson.
Thank you, Mayor Spearon. 2 weeks ago, last week, we did hear from Reconciliation Lethbridge Advisory Committee. They had worked with several groups over the year to put together the draft recommendations, and they are now in our hands to decide what should be done with them, and this would then send them to administration to deal with the recommendations and to develop a plan and report back. So I will open for questions, and with permission, I will start the questions. A question for the city manager or designate. We have a date here, December 14th, 2020, to report back. That would be after council deals with the budget this year, which is an odd thing that we have a budget deliberation this year. How will administration deal with any recommendations that have budget asks attached to them?
We can take a quick look at the report and the recommendations that were submitted by ARLAC. I'm not convinced we can do the work required to be able to feed into the budget process. So if we can and we're able to identify some that might have an obvious resource implication, we'll do that. If not, we'd have to come to council after the fact.
Thank you. So if there's no other questions, I will just use that as my opening debate.
Okay. Any questions for Councillor Crowson? There are none, so that was her debate. Any debate? There's none, so I'll ask her to close.
It is absolutely essential that we do not just have more talk about these recommendations and other reconciliation work, that we actually go into action and get things done. And this is moving it along. We will get a report back by the end of this year. That gives us time in 2021 to implement things and to get working on things. I can tell you from having heard from the Indigenous community, the one last thing they don't want to hear anymore is just talk and talk and talk. They want to see things done. And this is moving this forward, so I will ask my colleagues for support. I'll call the question.
Question's been called. All in favor? Is any opposed? Okay, thanks. Councillor Higgin leave the meeting?
Yes, he did. I just noticed.
Okay.
I didn't say.
Okay, because he's sponsoring an OBR coming up. Okay, we'll deal with 5.9. Again, a resolution from Councillor Crowson, Recovery Lethbridge. Be it resolved that the report from the Lethbridge Community and Economic Recovery Committee be received as information, and further be it resolved that the COVID-19 relief request framework be approved. Councillor Crowson.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. So there are two parts to this. There is the report, and then there is the relief request framework. Focusing on the relief request framework, this has been based on the deferral policy that has already been approved by council. And what this would do is that if any relief requests come before council and before administration, they will be treated equally, and they will all have the same questions asked. It also ensures that information is gathered to support any council decision that we might be making. So we'll have information on how it would affect the corporation, if it does, how it affects the organization, how it affects the community, and information would be gathered by administration prior to coming to council. And so that is in there, and that comes forward from the Recovery Committee. Also attached in the information is we're going to close the loop on the 10th August referral to Recovery Committee to review the report from the Chamber of Commerce. In the report done by our administration, they are recommending that no funding for PPE for childcare industry is required at this time. So definitely want to thank the Chamber for their presentation and for starting these important conversations about childcare and affordable and accessible access to it. It is absolutely vital to our community, but fortunately our childcare organizations are able to access PPE through other ways, through funding from other orders of government, and this is not something that Council needs to look at this time. So that is the report, and as I said, there is also a request to approve the relief request framework in there, and I will open it for questions.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Kaufman.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Thank you, Councillor Crowson. To the city manager designate, when it talks about the framework, is this just something that somebody will send a letter, or is there going to be a bit more delving into the details of each of those 11 points?
So we would communicate back to whoever it was that was requesting a deferral or whatever the case may be, and we would do the work to make sure that each of those 11 points were answered to the best of the requester's ability.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Spearman.
Thank you. I noticed that I think the deadline was October the 1st for payment for property taxes, for example, and it's now October the 5th. So some of those organizations requesting deferrals might be in limbo, or their circumstances may have changed. Have we got any information on what might have happened with some of those requests that came in before September 30th?
I'll defer the city treasurer here in a second. So to my knowledge, we have 2 requests that are in, and we were waiting for the development of that framework so that we could contact those folks. So I'm aware of 2, so we'll do that now. We'll reach out to those 2 that we're aware of. I'm not sure if there are others, Haley, or not.
Mayor Spearman, the 2 is the only ones that I'm aware of at this point. I think that if it's something council wanted to support, the cancellation of the penalties incurred from up to the point that a decision is made as a yes or no can be waived if that's the support of council. So we'll get on those 2 requests.
Okay, thank you. Are there any further questions from council? I see none, so move on to debate.
Well, it did take a bit of time for all of this to get through recovery and up here, so I'm hoping that my colleagues will support this. We have worked on the framework, and as I said, it comes out of the deferral policy and the information related to PPE. With all of that, I will call for the question unless there's further debate.
Okay, question has been called. All in favor? Are there any opposed? I hear none. That is unanimous. Move on to official business. I have a resolution from Councillor Higgin. Amendment to Lethbridge Housing Authority Ministerial Order. Whereas on August the 10th, 2020, City Council received a presentation from the Lethbridge Housing Authority, and whereas the Board of Directors of the Lethbridge Housing Authority wishes to amend Ministerial Order H 089/94, the Ministerial Order establishing the Lethbridge Housing Authority as follows. Section 2, Lethbridge Housing Authority is the only member of the management body. Section 3, sub 1, A, 9 members appointed by the Lethbridge Housing Authority. 1 member designated by the Municipal Council, and 8 members from the public at large. Section 3, the board shall be appointed as follows. Existing members of the board shall continue with their term of office as following the effective date of this order. Subject to Section 3, sub 1, members of the board, except the existing members, shall be appointed by the Lethbridge Housing Authority in accordance with this order and Lethbridge Housing Authority's bylaws at the time the board requests. Whereas the Government of Alberta requests the support of City Council in this request, Therefore, be it resolved that City Council support the request of the Lethbridge Housing Authority to revise Ministerial Order H 089/94, and further be it resolved that Council authorize the Mayor to send a letter on behalf of Council to the Government of Alberta advising of this support. Councillor Higgin.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. This has been before us already here a few weeks ago, was passed on to CIC for further questions, so I think we've pretty much, from what I understand, asked any question. If there's any questions that need to be had, would have been at our CIC, but again, I guess I will open it up for questions if there's any questions. If not, that's my opening for debate.
Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Thank you, Councillor Hagan, for bringing it forward. The final whereas, it does indicate that the GOA requires the support. My thought was that the request could still be made without our support. So I'm just wondering, is that true that this can't go forward without City Council's support?
Yes, the province could still grant that. It's just that they prefer to have the support of council. So, and I think that's important as well.
Don't require us to. The LHA could still make the request. The GOA could evaluate the rationale and act without our support.
Is more favorable, obviously, with the council support. Yes.
Thank you.
Acting Mayor Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just some questions. I don't know who's going to answer the question. I'll direct it to the city manager. So right now, the board is appointed by council. Am I correct on that?
I've lost the bubble on this one, to be frank. It's gone around. Can
Okay,
anybody
so
clarify that?
I got two head nods from the city clerk and one of my colleagues. So it sounds like, and if we pass this, council will no longer be appointing the board. Am I correct?
That is correct, yeah.
So I'm having troubles getting my head around. Would this be the equivalent of having the city manager appoint the council that he works for versus having council elected? Would that be the same thing almost? Because the board, the director, the executive director answers to the board, just like the city manager, I don't like to say answers to council. Would this be the equivalent of the city manager? Because who would be appointing this new board? Would it be the executive director, or who would be appointing the new board?
The Housing Authority, the board.
So that would be technically the executive, am I correct in that, or?
No.
Who would be doing that?
The board itself, similar to any other ones out there, if you pick.
So who would pick the board members that go on this? What?
Ultimately, if this change was supported, and it works like this in many other jurisdictions, and there are risks with that have been identified by council members previously, but it would be the board.
The board.
Bridge Housing Authority. Yeah.
But who puts the board there? Who makes the say, like, you get to be on the board, you get to be on the board, and you get to be on board if this resolution was to pass?
If I could add, I think it's a staggered appointment process, so there'd be some board members that would stay on and they would recruit for the vacant membership is what I
Okay, so if there was a
understand.
vacant member, who is the individual or the body that says you're on the board? Who does that? Who makes that decision?
It's the same as probably 95% of the boards out there. For example, you would have at your AGM, names would come forward, they would be appointed there, similar to that of, I don't know, pick the food bank, the Lethbridge Hurricanes board, any majority of the boards.
So, yeah, and I agree with that. So, but I just want to make sure I get my head around this. For example, the Hurricanes have members and their shareholders who vote for that. Exhibition have shareholders or members to do that. Who appoints the board member? I don't know who makes that call. Because right now it's council is the oversight. And so now council will lose that oversight. So who has that oversight now?
Who are you asking the question to?
I'm asking that question to anyone here, so.
Well, I'm going to let Councillor Higgin answer the question because he's the mover of the resolution.
Those are just my questions, thank you.
So it's just current board members, as indicated here. So, and it is in other jurisdictions, other housing bodies, that is the board, the current board will select it, similar to many other boards. sorry, I don't know if there's another
Okay.
way to explain that, but it's the current board would
Okay,
do that.
thank you. So this helps me out then. So that would be the equivalent, just so I have this in my head here, is if city council, let's say, Councillor Carlson and Councillor Campbell and Councillor Miyashiro say, I'm not running again, I'm no longer on the board, it's up to us to decide who we want to sit with us, and we would be the ones that decide that?
That's right.
And
Not the city manager.
that's enough said already. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Councillor Miyashiro.
Thanks, Councillor Hagan. So further to what Councillor Parker said, has the board developed some policy around having a nominating committee so that the board, so it's important, this is important because, as you said, a lot of not-for-profits work that way, but most not-for-profits make sure that the job of recruiting board members does not fall to the executive director or the CAO, it falls to the board itself. Is your board developing nominating a policy that designates a nominating committee to bring forward nominees?
Yes, that's correct, and working together with the province on that. Yes.
You are working on that right now?
Correct.
And thank you for that. That's good to hear. Has LHA gone out to any of their stakeholders or partners in the community to say, hey, what do you think about this? Just to have a discussion about optics, the operations,
I don't see where there would need to be, but no, I don't
because
believe
it's a community housing body. It's public money, and it's not like their own. You know what I mean? It's not like. Well, let me put it this way: just about every other community organization, when they're making big changes, will go out to their stakeholders to have that discussion about get the opinion of the stakeholders on what that could be, just to get an idea of the perception. So you're just saying you didn't do it?
Nope.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, we'll move on to debate. Councillor Higgin.
I'll just save for closing.
Okay, Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. I appreciate this coming forward from Councillor Hagan. I know that we did have a presentation some time ago. My gut feeling is if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I think at this juncture, we need to work more closely with all of our partners in housing, and I know that's still possible under this proposed change, but perhaps less easily achieved. I did want to seek clarity in the language because I don't think the GOA requires council to weigh in one way or the other. I believe they could receive the information, the request from LHA, review all of the rationale, evaluate it, and make the change if they so desired. So at this juncture, I can't be supporting this support. Thank you.
Any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor Miyashiro.
Thanks, Mr. Spearman. I'm wondering, I don't know if I should wonder aloud or, I'm just thinking back to when you took over as chair and how that actually changed the direction of that organization because council appointed you and there were some issues going on with that organization. Would that same thing happen in the positive way that it did if the board kept perpetuating the same thing? Because in all fairness, even though council appointed that board for years, there were some things going on that the board wasn't that interested in finding more out about until you actually got on the board. And so it's not that I don't think that I would just say no for any reason, because there's no good reason to say no. But I'm wondering if you're working on some board policies, if those could come back, if those new board policies could come back to council before we say yes. I don't have a problem in general with this concept. My only problem is, Councillor Hagan, that some things haven't been addressed systemically that could still exist from before you got on that board. That's it's not a question. I guess that's my statement, and I'd like to see that come back to council before I give my approval, so I'm asking for a deferral on this.
Any further debate? I see none. I'll ask Councillor Higgin to close.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Well,
I just asked for a deferral, but I guess that doesn't matter.
Point of order.
Okay. I didn't hear you make a motion. I just heard you say you'd like a deferral. Are you going to move for a delay?
I would like to have a deferral on this so that, so we can have that discussion with Councillor Higgin about how that board's gonna be structured and the way it's gonna work. I don't have a problem philosophically doing that. I'm just, because you and I had so many conversations about this over the years, about governance and what you'd like to see on there. And I just need the comfortability that passing this off is a huge thing. It's a big responsibility that the council has had over the past, and it's not something I think we should take lightly just because we're asked to do it. And I feel, like I said, philosophically, I don't have a problem with it, but I will move that we defer this until the LHA board's willing to show us what their governance model is going to be, including their board policies.
can I speak to that?
I'm going to ask the city clerk. Councillor Miyashiro's made a motion to defer. Does it need a seconder?
Yes, it does.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Croson seconds. Okay. All in favor of deferral? Opposed? Councillor Morrow?
Opposed.
Councillor Kaufman?
In favor?
Okay, the motion to defer is defeated 6-3. Is it 5-4? Okay, put up your hands if you were in favor of deferral. Okay, 5-4. Defeated 5-4. So we'll deal with the motion today. Councillor Higgin, would you like to close?
Thank you, and thank you for the questions and debate. I guess there's a sense of frustration as we brought this forward here. I want to say it's been a couple months ago. And then we said we needed more discussion on this and that the questions would come if we had them, yet it came to a CIC and it fell on deaf ears and nobody said anything. Now we're back in front of us again today because the discussion was supposed to happen at the CIC, which didn't. No one had any concern. So I felt that it was important to bring it back again as nothing was needed for discussion. So for that reason, I've again brought it forward and I would ask for council support.
Okay, question's been called. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Morrow?
In favor.
Councillor Kaufman?
Opposed?
What was the score? Okay, 3 in favor, 6 opposed. The motion is defeated. Okay, we'll move on to inquiries. There's no inquiries in the agenda. We'll move on to council updates. Any council updates? Councillor Campbell?
Sorry, I had an inquiry.
Okay,
Sorry about
council
that.
inquiry, go ahead.
This is just to the city manager. I just wanted to get an update, if I could, on our Dutch elm disease issue.
And we'll provide that shortly.
Thank you.
Any further inquiries? Council updates? Any committees, activity? Councillor Carlson?
Thank you, Mayor Spinner. I gave a brief update about Tourism Lethbridge and welcoming our new executive director. I think we have sent out our Tourism Lethbridge, I should say, has sent out their COVID restart plan to all of our stakeholders and individuals. I believe it's been shared with yourself. If any members of council would like to see it, I think it's an excellent plan. And if you ask, I can make sure that gets shared with you.
The restart?
COVID restart plan, yes.
It looks impressive. Yeah, thank you. Good. I attended the Mayors and Reeves meeting on Friday afternoon, 40 Mayors and Reeves from southwestern Alberta. I made the presentation on ambulance dispatch. There was solid support from the Mayors and Reeves, and they passed a motion endorsing our position. So we have support from all over southern Alberta from municipalities in support of EMS dispatch from Lethbridge. And they will be communicating that to the provincial government. With that, I think at this point we have to go back into closed session. Can I have a motion to go in camera? So moved by Councillor Crowson. All in favor? And I assume in favor online.